The Revelations of Saint Birgitta of Sweden, Volume 3, page 30. Sixth, because he has to pay his debts down to the last farthing and remain in punishment until then, you should know that, both before and at his death, he had the intention of paying them off, though it was not as fervent as it should have been. Because of his intention, he is among the ranks of those to be saved. This is why his relatives, who have inherited his possessions, should have not only the intention of paying off any debts they know of, but they should actually do so. They should humbly ask the people to whom they pay back his debts to forgive his soul if they have incurred any losses due to the long wait. Otherwise, if they do not pay off his debts, his relatives will bear the guilt of his sins. Seventh, because he was a judge, but lent his authority to wicked representatives. He is now in the hands of demons. However, because he did not intend for them to behave wickedly, but because he gave the matter less care and attention than he ought to have, he can be freed from his torments if he receives some help. Explanation. This was a nobleman of a merciful character. After his death, he appeared to Lady Birgitta, saying, "Nothing raises me up from my sufferings as much as the prayers of the just, and the sacrament of the altar. I was myself a judge, but entrusted my office to those less fond of justice. For this reason, I still remain in exile. But I would be freed sooner if those who should be and who were my own people showed more gentle concern for my salvation." This is more on the same man in this book in chapter 21. Page 47. The son answered her, "Blessed are you, my dear mother. Your words are full of sweetness, and are sweeter than honey. Your words come from a heart full of mercy, and thus resound with mercy. This man for whom you pray will receive 3 mercies for your sake. First, he will be saved from the hands of demons that attack him insatiably like crows. Just as birds that hear some frightening sound let go of prey they have in their claws and flee when frightened by the sound, so the demons will let go of his soul for your sake, and never more touch or molest it. Second, he will be moved from hotter to cooler flames. Third, the holy angels will comfort him. However, he is still not completely free, and he still needs help. You see the fullness of justice in me, and know that no one can enter beatitude unless he is completely purified as gold by fire. Therefore, for the sake of your entreaties, he will be set completely free when the time for mercy and justice comes." Page 52 on. Mary spoke, "Blessed be you, my son, King of glory and Lord of angels. I am praying to you again on behalf of the robber." The son answered, "Blessed be you, dearest mother. Just as your milk entered my human body and nourished all my limbs, so your words enter and delight my heart. For your every petition is made with discernment, and your every desire is for mercy. Therefore, I will show mercy to the robber, for the sake of your love." The mother answered, "Give him then, my dear son, that which is dearest to me, namely, your body and your grace. For this robber is hungry and empty of goodness. Give him the grace to extinguish his wretched hunger, to strengthen his weakness, and to incite his will, so slothful up to now in your love, to carry out good deeds." The son answered, "As a child, from whom food is withheld, soon dies in the body, so too this man, who from childhood has been nourished by the devil, cannot revive unless he is fed on my food. If he wants to receive my body, if he aims at being refreshed with the sweetness of his fruit, let him come to me with these 3 virtues: true contrition for his offenses, the intention of redressing the wrongs he has committed, and the intention of no more committing wrongs, but of persevering in the good. Regarding the prayers of those who pray for him, I will tell you what must be done for the robber, if he desires salvation. First, because he dared to stand against the King of glory, now for the sake of redressing his crimes, he should defend the faith of my holy church, and be ready to sacrifice his life for her protection. As earlier, he made every effort to gain the honorable status and comfortable life of a worldly lord, so now he should make every effort to spread the faith and suppress the enemies of the church's faith. Just as earlier he led people astray while working in the service of the world, so may he now work to bring to me all those he can by his word and example. I assure you that if he does no more than to put on his helmet for the sake of my honor, and take his shield upon his arm, with the intention of standing up for the holy faith, it shall be accounted to him as a deed, even if he should be called away at that moment. Even if enemies approach, no one will be able to hurt him. Therefore, let him labor daringly, for when he has me, then he has a mighty Lord. Let him labor manfully, for a precious reward will be given him, that of everlasting life. In return for his offense to the angels and saints, and because he severed souls from their bodies, let him have a mass of all saints said every day for a whole year, wherever he thinks best, giving the celebrant a stipend, in order to win back through his offering the saints and angels he has offended, and regain favor in their sight. They are won back with the oblation of my body, which is a regal offering, when it is presented and received in love and humility. Again, because he robbed others of their possessions, inflicting injury on widows and orphans, he should return everything that he knows to be wrongful possessions, humbly asking the merciful pardon of the injured parties. Moreover, because he cannot make compensation to all those whom he has injured, he should have an altar built, at his own expense, in whatever church he thinks most suitable, where a Mass should be celebrated daily, until the end of the world, for all those he has wronged. In order for this altar to endure in a firm and stable way, he should grant enough of an endowment to maintain a chaplain to celebrate Mass there perpetually. Then, since humility has been lacking to him for a long time, he should humble himself as much as he can, and ask those he has offended to make peace and be reconciled in so far as it may most suitably be done. Moreover, if he should ever hear praise or blame for the sins and errors he has committed, let him not defend himself presumptuously, or take any boastful delight in them. Rather, he should humbly think of himself and say, "Indeed, sin used to delight me a lot, but it did not profit me in any way. I went beyond the limits in my presumption. If I had wanted to, I could very well have prevented it. So, brothers, ask the Lord to give me the spirit to repent of such things and atone like a man for the sins I have committed." Again, because of his multiple offenses and carnal excesses, he should discipline his body with a rational discipline. If he listens to these words and puts them into practice, he will have salvation and life everlasting. If not, however, I will make him pay for his sins until the last farthing, and his punishment will be more bitter than it otherwise would have been, because I have let him be warned. The Son spoke to the bride, "Although I know all things, tell me in your own words what the condition of your will is." Straightway her guardian angel answered for her, saying, "Her will is as it may be read, 'Thy will be done on the earth as it is in heaven.'" The Lord answered, "This is what I look for and want. This is the service most pleasing to me. Therefore, my bride, you must be like a firmly rooted tree that need not fear the following 3 dangers. First, if the tree is firmly rooted, the mole does not bore through it. Second, it does not get overturned by the onrush of the winds. Third, it does not dry up from the heat of the sun. That tree is your soul. Its principal root is a good will that agrees with the will of God. As many virtues spring from this root of the will as there are roots in a tree. The principal root from which the others grow must be strong and thick and deeply rooted in the earth. So too, your will must be strong in patience, thick in divine charity, and deeply grounded in true humility. Your will is rooted like that. It need not fear the mole. What does the mole burrowing beneath the earth symbolize, if not the devil, who burrows about unseen and upsets the soil? If the root of the will is unstable in patience, he bites and splits it. He undoes it by biting on it, when, by inserting base thoughts and feelings into your heart, he pulls your will apart and makes you desire something against my will. Then, once the principal root has been impaired, all the other roots are impaired as well, and the trunk dries up. This is to say, if your will and affections are corrupted, then the other virtues become stained and displeasing to me. Even more, if your bad will is not corrected through penance, you deserve to be subjected to the devil's control, even if your will does not achieve its effect. If the root of the will is strong and thick, the mole can indeed gnaw at it, but not split it. The root even grows stronger from the gnawing and acquires greater strength. So it is with the devil. If your will always remains firm in failure, as well as in success, the devil can indeed gnaw at it by inserting base thoughts. But if your will puts up resistance and does not consent to them, then they will not be a punishment to you. Instead, they will bring benefits to you through your patience that will bring you a great reward and a higher level of virtue. If you happen to fall due to impatience or because of something unforeseen, then get up quickly through penance and contrition, and I will pardon your sins and give you the patience and fortitude you need to endure the temptations of the devil. In the second place, if the tree is firmly rooted, it need not fear the onrush of the winds. The same for you. If your will accords with mine, it need not worry about worldly misfortune, which is like the wind. Think of yourself that if you should suffer misfortune, it may be to your benefit. You need not worry about contempt or scorn, for I can raise up or cast down those whom I will. You need not grieve over bodily suffering, for I can heal or strike down, and I do nothing without a reason. Whoever sets his will against mine suffers unrest in the present life, since he is unable to carry out what he aims at, and moreover will be punished in the life to come because of his bad intention. If he entrusted his will to me, he would easily be able to endure whatever comes his way. In the third place, a well-rooted tree need not fear excessive heat. That is, those people who have a perfect intention do not dry up in their love of God due to love of the world, and are not pulled away from the love of God by any base impulse. The souls of those who are unstable, however, are quickly turned away from their good resolution and love of God, either through a suggestion from the devil or worldly setbacks, or the love in them that uselessly yearns for vain things. For this reason, the man whom you have in mind is not a good tree. His principal root has been broken. The "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." He has taken on austerity of a celibate life, but the warmth of love has grown cold in him. For the sake of my mother's prayers, I aided him, because he had 3 difficulties: scarcity of means, weakness of body, lack of knowledge. It was my will that if he persevered patiently in these 3 difficulties, he would gain eternal plenty, eternal health and beauty, and the knowledge and vision of God. In order for him to obtain them, I aided him by giving him spiritual fortitude and inspiring my will in him. But this will was opposed to mine. He seeks help lukewarmly. He worries about his poverty, not for my sake, but for the sake of his own advantage. He worries about suffering pain due to his ill health. He worries about others despising him for his lack of knowledge. Therefore, according to my hidden knowledge, he has obtained the 3 things he wanted, and which were troubling him. Now, indeed, he has greater means for his physical needs than before, and greater knowledge and a greater reputation. This is why, when the diabolical mole touches him with temptation, his fall must be feared, because his principal intention has been broken. And so, if his love of the world grows hotter, he will wither as to virtue, and inclined to greed. If any tribulation should afflict him, he will be full of worry, like a tree shaken by the wind, unstable on all sides, complaining about everything. If honors blow upon him, he will be no less anxious about how to please everyone, how to be considered good by everyone, and how to resist attacks wisely. See how much instability arises from the instability of the impaired root? Now what will I do? I am like a skillful gardener, whose garden has many unfruitful trees and few good ones. If he cuts down the good trees altogether, who will enter the garden? If, however, all the unfruitful trees are uprooted, the garden will look extremely ugly from all the holes and excavation of the ground. This is how I work. If I brought all good people out of the carnal world to me, then who would enter the holy church? If I took away all evildoers at once, then extremely ugly holes would appear in the garden, and everyone would serve me out of fear of punishment rather than love. So I work like a clever grafter who inserts a shoot into the dry trunk. When it is grown and taken firm root, he throws the part away that was dry into the fire. This is what I shall do. I shall plant a sweet bed of plants with scions of virtues. As they grow, I will cut away the dry parts and throw them into the fire. I shall cleanse my garden so that nothing unfruitful remains to impede young and fruitful branches. Explanation. About a prior who repented through the words of Lady Birgitta and afterward became devout. The same prior saw Christ stretching out his hand toward him and saying, "Here the nails entered the solid bone." When his prior had died, Christ said, "That friar, your friend, is not dead but lives, for he lived up to the name of friar by his deeds." But you may ask, who is a true friar? I answer you, he is a true brother who, as the proverb says, carries on all his belongings on his back, who desires nothing but God, and who knows how to content himself with what he needs, who acknowledges me, God made flesh, as his own brother, and loves me as a brother. About the same friar. When the same friar had difficulties believing the grace given to Lady Birgitta, he received an ecstatic vision of the lady, with fire from heaven descending upon her. He woke up and was marveling at the vision, and thought it an illusion. But then he fell asleep again, and heard a voice saying clearly twice, "No one can stop this fire from going forth. For I, power itself, will send this fire to east and west, north and south, to set many aflame." After this, the friar became a believer in and defender of the revelation. Again, on the same chapter. A certain friar suffered a disease for 3 years, so that his feet were full of putrefied sores, with a marrow flowing out of them. He suffered so patiently that he always had Jesus in his heart and on his lips, saying, "Jesus, most worshipful God, have mercy on me." When he was close to death, he cried out, I desire, I desire, I desire. O my desire, come to me." When he was asked what he desired, he answered, "I saw God, and out of desire for him and the sight of him, I am so full of joy and happiness that I would be quite content, even if I should live 100 years with this disease." After that, the friar died joyfully in the arms of his brothers around midnight. On the following Sunday, the lady was in a spiritual rapture and heard, "Daughter, because lords and masters do not want to come to me in humility, I gather poor and simple souls in the kingdom of heaven. Today this poor and simple man has found wisdom beyond Solomon, riches that do not age, and a crowning reward that ever grows and will never end. Tell that brother who served this man in his infirmity for his own penance that, thanks to his service, he will be freed from temptations and receive spiritual fortitude and a joyful end, and will wake in the rest of Lazarus." Page 70. Then the Lord added, "Cloth is torn and does not feel it, and an apple is peeled without hurting its owner. That is why my passion is like That is what my passion is like in the heart of this snake, for he never reflects upon it attentively in his heart. He puts his trust in predestination, saying, if God has foreseen that I will be condemned, why should I struggle any more? Or, if I am to be saved, then it will be easy for him to accept my repentance. Woe to him if he does not quickly change his ways, for no one is rejected due to my foreknowledge. You can be certain, too, that the female snake, his mother, will not obtain what she foolishly desires. Neither her sons nor her family will prosper. Rather, she will die in bitter grief, and her memory will fall into oblivion. 141. The Son speaks. I told you in my gospel that heaven could be obtained by means of two things. The first is when a person becomes as humble as a small child. The second is when a person does violence to his or her own self. That man is humble who considers all his progress and all his good deeds to be as nothing, and does not put any trust in his own merits. That man does violence to himself, who goes against his disordered physical impulses and chastises himself in a wise manner, so as not to offend God. Such a man does not believe he will obtain heaven through his own righteous deeds, but through the mercy of God. Page 176. A man from the Diocese of Abo, who did not know Swedish, came to Rome. Since nobody in Rome understood him, and he could not find a confessor, he asked the lady for advice about what he should do. She heard in spirit Jesus Christ, God's Son, speaking, "This man who has asked you for advice is grieving because he has no one to hear his confession. Tell him that his intention is sufficient for him. Did it not help the thief on the cross? Wasn't his a good intention? What opens up heaven, if not the intention to will what is good and hate what is evil? What makes hell, if not a disordered will and intention? Was not Lucifer created good? Or did I, goodness and virtue itself, create something evil? Of course not. It was after Lucifer abused his power of will and moved it in a disordered way that he became disordered himself. He became wicked by reason of his wicked intention. So this poor man should stand firm and not back away. When he returns to his country, he should seek the salvation of his soul and listen to wise persons, subject his will, and obey the advice of righteous individuals more than his own will. If, however, he should die along the way, what I told the thief will apply to him. You shall be with me in paradise." The Revelations of St. Birgitta of Sweden, Volume 1, which covers books 1 through 3, page 73. There are three kinds of people who serve me in this world. The first are the ones who believe me to be God and the giver of all things, who has power over everything. They serve me with the intention of obtaining temporal goods and honor. But the things of heaven are as nothing to them, and they would just as soon lose them so that they can obtain present goods. Worldly success in everything falls to their share, according to their wishes. Since they have lost the eternal goods, I recompense them with temporal comforts for whatever good service they do for me, right down to the last farthing and the very last moment. The second are the ones who believe me to be God Almighty and a strict judge, but who serve me out of fear of punishment and not out of love of the heavenly glory. If they did not fear me, they would not serve me. The third are the ones who believe me to be the creator of all things and true God, and who believe me to be just and merciful. They do not serve me out of any fear of punishment, but out of divine love and charity. They would prefer any punishment, if they could bear it, rather than once provoke me to anger. They truly deserve to be heard when they pray, since their will accords with my will. Page 76. There are many simple souls in the church who do few works, but are saved by means of their faith. Through it, they believe me to be the Creator and Redeemer of the universe. There is no one who cannot understand and come to the belief that I am God, if only he considers how the earth bears fruit, and how the heavens give rain, how the trees grow green, how the animals subsist, each in its own species, how the stars are of service to mankind, how things opposed to the will of man occur. Accordingly, if a person cannot understand or comprehend my power due to his weakness, he can, by means of faith, see and believe. And finally, page 212. However, as I said, the enemy wants to impede the people delivering my gold in 3 ways. First, he wants to make them slow and lazy. There is both a physical and a spiritual laziness. The physical kind is when the body tires of working, getting up, and so forth. Spiritual laziness is when a spiritually minded person, knowing the sweet delight and grace of my Spirit, prefers to rest in that delight rather than to go out and help others to partake of it with him. Did not Peter and Paul experience the overflowingly sweet delight of my Spirit? If it had been my will, they would rather have lain hidden in the lowest part of the earth with the interior delight they had than to go out into the world. However, in order that others might be made participants in their sweet delight, and in order to instruct others along with themselves, they preferred to go out for other people's sake, as well as for their own greater glory, and not to remain by themselves without strengthening others with the grace given them. In like manner, my friends, although they would like to be alone and to enjoy that sweet delight they have already, should now go forth so that others might also become participants in their joy. Just as someone with abundant possessions does not use them for himself alone, but entrusts them to others, so too my words and my grace should not be kept hidden, but should be broadcast to others, so that they too may be edified. The Revelations of St. Birgitta, Volume 2, which includes books 4 through 5. Page 63. There are indeed some people who believe they can reach heaven by their own merits, and God spares them from the devil's temptations due to his hidden plan. There are others who think they can make reparation to God for their transgressions with their own works. The error of all these is altogether damning. For even if a person were to kill his body 100 times over, he could not make up 1,000th of the account he owes to God, because it is God who gives us the ability and the will, seasons and health, who fills us with a desire for the good, who gives us riches and honor, who kills and gives life, raises up and lays down. All things are in his hand. Hence, to him alone should all honor be given, and no one deserves to be counted for anything before God. Page 109. These vestments, however, have been changed and are now despised. People love to make excuses and smooth over their guilt instead of going to confession. They love constant lewdness instead of chastity. They love work for the benefit of the body instead of work for the salvation of the soul. They love worldly ambition and pride instead of the honor and love of God. They love all kinds of redundancy instead of praiseworthy thrift, presumption and criticizing God's judgments instead of the fear of God, and the clergy's thanklessness toward everyone instead of God's love toward all. Therefore, as I said through the prophet, I shall come to in indignation, and tribulation shall give them understanding. Then the mother of mercy, being present, replied, Blessed are you, my son, for your justice. I am speaking to you who know all things for the sake of this bride. You want her to understand spiritual truths, but she is unable to grasp the spiritual meaning except by means of images. Before you received a human nature from me, you once spoke as God, saying that if 10 righteous men could be found in the city, you would be willing to show mercy to the whole city for the sake of those 10. There still are countless priests who placate you with the offering of your body. Therefore, because of these priests, have mercy on those who have little good in them. This I beg, I who gave birth to you in your human nature. All your elect ask this together with me. Page 135. The male must be as strong as iron. Just as iron subdues all, so too a man of charity must be eager to humble all those who stand in the way of faith and good morals, without yielding because of abusive language. He must not bend due to friendships, nor grow lukewarm for the sake of his material comforts. He must not hide for the sake of bodily ease, nor be afraid of dying, for no one can take someone's life away without God's permission. 136. The mother asked the knight again, What do you still need, my son? And he answered, My hands are naked and have no armor. The mother said, I will help you so that your hands will not be naked. Just as you have 2 bodily hands, you likewise have 2 spiritual ones. The right hand, with which the sword is held, symbolizes the work of justice. There should be 5 virtues, like 5 fingers there. The first finger means that every just person must first be just to himself. This is done by guarding against anything in one's speech, action, or example that might offend one's neighbor, so that one does not undo, through one's own disorderly behavior, what one teaches others, or justly reprehends in them. The second finger means not to carry out justice or the deeds of justice for the sake of human favor or worldly greed, but for the love of God alone. The third means not to show unjust fear of anyone, nor to dissemble anything out of friendship, nor to swerve away from justice or for anyone's sake, rich or poor, friend or foe. The fourth means to be ready and willing to die for the sake of justice. The fifth means not only to do justice, but also to love justice wisely. The result of this is that the sentence shows both mercy and justice, and the person who commits a lesser sin is corrected in one way, while the person who commits a greater is corrected in another way, and the person who sins from ignorance in one way, and the person who sins by design or malice in another way. Whoever has these 5 fingers should be careful not to sharpen his sword through impatience, nor dull it through worldly pleasure, nor drop it through imprudence, or darken it through frivolity. The left hand symbolizes godly prayer. This too has 5 fingers. The first is a firm belief in the articles of faith concerning the divine and human natures, putting it all into practice and believing all that the Holy Church, God's bride, professes. The second is the refusal to sin deliberately against God, along with the desire to make reparation for all the sins you have committed through contrition and atonement. The third is to entreat God to turn the love of the flesh into a spiritual love. The fourth is living for nothing else in the world but to give glory to God and to reduce the amount of sin. The fifth is never to rely on your own strength in any way, but ever to fear God, and to await death at any hour. There, my son, these are the two hands you should have. With the right hand you must brandish the sword of justice against the transgressors of justice. With the left hand of prayer you must plead for God's help, so that you never trust to your own righteousness, nor become insolent toward God. And finally, page 230. Accordingly, you must run toward the sinner with all your desire, with a divine zeal and complete patience, both in season and out of season, so that the sinner may be converted. Where the righteous man makes no progress through speech or admonishments, there he must exercise zeal and persevere in earnest prayer. One hand is the divine wisdom, with which he shows to the sinner that all the things of this world are fleeting and slippery, that one who delights in them is deceived and unsafe, for they were all given for one's needs and not for excess. The other hand is good example and good action, for the good person ought to do as he teaches, in order to strengthen his listeners by his example. Wicked people who do not want to be good do desire to seem to be what they are not, because they want to be called praiseworthy, but not to live in a praiseworthy way. They make an outward show of holiness and feign justice, although they never give justice a thought. This is how they become so proud and hard as flint in their appearance of simulated holiness, that they are not softened by rebukes or clear reasoning. Accordingly, God's servant must use the hammer of harsh rebuke and the fire of divine prayer on such as these in order to convince the wicked and with the word of truth, and gradually soften them up from their hardness, and warm them through their prayers, and enkindle them with respect to knowledge of God and of themselves, just as Stephen did. So anyone who wants to present me with a fish's blood should cast the net of preaching over it. Not the kind consisting in the rotten strings of elaborately eloquent philosophers and orators, but in simplicity of speech and in humble deeds. With simple preaching of God's word is as sonorous as bronze in God's sight, and powerfully attracts sinners to God. My church began and developed not through eloquent teachers, but through humble and ordinary people. Those people who stretch out the feet of their affections and use their fortitude for temporal ends are not steadfast in winning souls, but sink beneath the waves of temporal cares. This eye of fear should be put out and plucked away from the soul through the contemplation of divine goodness, by considering and firmly believing that every person who puts his or her trust in God and seeks to win over a sinner for the sake of God shall have God himself as a protector. I was like the strongest steel when I preferred to suffer death rather than lose souls, and preferred to hear insults rather than to come down from the cross. Hence, anyone who desires patience must imitate my constancy. For if I, who was innocent, suffered, what wonder is it that a person who deserves his sentence should suffer? These 10 hours represent nothing other than the 10 counsels that should be given to the convert. The first is to believe in the 10 commandments that I gave to the people of Israel. The second is to receive and venerate the sacraments of my church. The third is to feel sorrow for past sins and to have the perfect intention of no longer committing them. The fourth is to obey my friends as often as they tell the convert to do something that goes against his own will. The fifth is to despise all his base habits that go against God and good morals. The sixth is to have the desire of bringing as many people as possible to God. The seventh is to display true humility in his action, avoiding giving bad example. The 8th is to have patience in adversity and not to complain about God's decisions. The 9th is not to listen to or keep company with those who set themselves against the holy Christian faith. The 10th is to ask God for the strength to persevere in love and to make a personal effort to do so. Anyone converted from evil ways who observes and keeps these 10 counsels will die away from love of the world and become alive to the love of God.